Alright, buckle up, you time-traveling wannabe pharaohs, because we're diving headfirst into the sandy, sweaty, and downright savage world of ancient Egypt. You think you could strut around the Nile like some TikTok influencer with a gold filter? Nah, fam, you wouldn't last a single day. Why? Oh, let's unpack this glorious dumpster fire of a civilization and find out why your modern ass would be toast before the sun god Ra even hit snooze. Picture this, it's 2500 BCE, you've just popped out of a time machine and you're standing in the middle of some dusty village with nothing but your skinny jeans and a Starbucks cup. First thing you notice? The smell. Oh, sweet baby Anubis, the smell. It's like a combo of unwashed feet, rotting fish, and whatever the hell they're burning to keep the flies away. You're gagging already, aren't you? Yeah, that's just the air. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where deodorant is as mythical as a unicorn orgy. The locals are staring at you like you're some alien with your shiny iPhone and your I Heart Avocado Toast t-shirt. They're rocking linen kilts and enough eyeliner to make a Hot Topic employee jealous. You try to say, yo, where's the Wi-Fi? But they just grunt and point at the Nile. Spoiler alert, the Nile is not a hotspot. It's a river. And it's your everything, your bath, your toilet, your drinking fountain, and probably your grave. You're thinking, okay, I'll just blend in, no biggie. But blending in ancient Egypt is like trying to blend into a mosh pit at a death metal concert. You're soft, you're spoiled, and you've never had to wipe your ass with a stick. Let's start with the basics, waking up. If you're lucky, you're sleeping on a mat made of reeds, which is basically a yoga mat's evil twin. If you're not lucky, and let's be real, you're nodiuri on the dirt floor with a rock for a pillow. Your spine's screaming, your neck's doing the exorcist twist, and you're already regretting every life choice that led you here. The sun's up and it's not messing around. It's 100 degrees by 6 a.m. and you're sweating like a vegan at a butcher shop. You stumble outside, hoping for a shower. But nope. Showers don't exist. You've got two options, splash some Nile water on your face and pray you don't get dysentery, or just embrace the crust. Most Egyptians? They're crusty and proud. They've got bigger problems, like not dying before lunch. Speaking of lunch, you're starving. You're dreaming of a breakfast burrito, but the menu here is bread, beer, and maybe some onions if you're fancy. The bread's so gritty it's like chewing sandpaper, because guess what? Sand is in everything. Your food, your water, your freaking eyelashes. You take one bite and your teeth are like, congratulations, you're drunk at 7 a.m. Now you've got to work. If you're a peasant, and you are, because time travel doesn't come with a trust fundiary hauling mud bricks or digging canals under the blazing sun. The overseer's got a whip, and he's not afraid to use it. You're like, bro, I have rights, and he's like, LOL, what's a right? You're sweating buckets, your skin's turning lobster red, and you're pretty sure you're hallucinating a McDonald's in the distance. By noon, you're ready to collapse, but there's no lunch break. You get a handful of dates and a pat on the back if you're lucky. If you're not, you get a sandal to the face. Let's talk hygiene, because your modern ass is obsessed with being clean. Newsflash, ancient Egyptians don't give a damn. They bathe in the Nile, where everyone else is also bathing, peeing, and dumping their trash. You dip in, thinking you're getting fresh, but now you've got someone's leftover lentils in your hair. Soap? Not a thing. You're scrubbing with sand and praying for a miracle. And don't even think about toilet paper. You're using your hand, a leaf, or yep, that stick we mentioned. Your butthole's already filing a complaint with HR. Oh, and let's not forget the bugs. Egypt's got flies, fleas, and scorpions that don't play nice. You're slapping yourself silly, but they're winning. One minute you're swatting a mosquito, the next you're screaming because a scorpion's camped out in your sandal. You're not surviving this, are you? Let's say you make it to midday without fainting. Now you've got to deal with the social scene. You're trying to make friends, but your broken Egyptian sounds like a drunk Google Translate. You point at yourself and say, me cool, but they think you're confessing to stealing their goat. Next thing you know, you're in a fistfight with a dude named Tahotep who smells like garlic and vengeance. You're not winning this fight. You've never thrown a punch in your life, and Tahotep's been wrestling crocodiles for fun. He knocks you out and you wake up with a face full of sand and zero dignity. By now you're thinking, I'll just chill with the priests or the pharaoh, they seem fancy. Dream on, buddy. The priests are busy shaving their entire bodies to stay pure and muttering curses at anyone who looks at them funny. The pharaoh? He's got better things to do, like marrying his sister and building a pyramid with your tax money. You're not getting an invite to the palace unless it's to mop the floor with your tongue. Let's talk about the gods, because ancient Egyptians are obsessed. There's a god for everything, son. Sky, cats, even farts. No lie, they've got a god for that. You're expected to pray, sacrifice, and not piss off the deities, but you're clueless. You accidentally step on a sacred cat and the whole village is ready to stone you. You're like, it's just a cat, and they're like, that's Bastet's cousin, you heathen. Now you're running for your life, dodging sandals and curses. The day's not even half over and you're already a mess. You're sunburned, hungover, covered in bug bites, and possibly cursed. You're starting to realize why nobody time travels to ancient Egypt for fun. But don't worry, it gets worse. Way worse. So, you're still alive, you poor, delusional soul. It's barely past noon in ancient Egypt and you're already a walking disaster. Your skin's peeling like a bad spray tan, your stomach's doing backflips from that chunky beer, and you're pretty sure you've got a scorpion hitchhiking in your kilt. But the day's not done screwing you over. Let's keep this train wreck rolling and see why you're about to become a footnote in some pharaoh's papyrus. First up, let's talk about the heat. It's not just hot, it's melt your face off hot. The sun's blasting you like it's got a personal vendetta, and there's no shade unless you're cool with hiding under a pile of donkey dung. Your modern ass is used to AC and iced lattes, so you're wilting faster than a kale salad in a microwave. You're chugging Nile water to stay hydrated, but surprise, that water's basically a petri dish of bacteria. Your guts are rumbling like a volcano, and you're about to learn what diarrhea in a desert feels like. Spoiler, it's not pretty, and there's no Imodium in 2500 BCE. You're squatting behind a palm tree, praying for mercy, but the flies are throwing a party on your misery. You're not surviving this, champ. Let's say you somehow avoid shitting yourself to death. Now you've got to deal with the animals. Ancient Egypt is like a zoo with no cages. Crocodiles are chilling in the Nile, just waiting for you to dip your toes in. Hippos are waddling around, and those chubby bastards are not as cute as they look. They'll crush you like a grape if you get too close. Oh, and don't forget the snakes. Cobras are everywhere, and they're not here to make friends. You step on one, and it's game over. No hospital, no anti-venom, just you screaming as your leg turns black. The locals? They're like, it happens every Tuesday. You're starting to miss your cubicle job, aren't you? Speaking of locals, let's talk about the class system. You're at the bottom, my friend. Below the peasants, below the slaves, probably below the goats. You've got no skills, no status, and no clue how to make papyrus or carve a statue. You're useless, and everyone knows it. The nobles are gliding by in their fancy litters, sipping wine and laughing at your sunburn. You try to flirt with one, thinking your modern charm's gonna win them over, but they take one look at your crooked teeth and yeet you into the mud. Dental care's not a thing here, by the way. Your Invisalign dreams are dead. The locals are rocking teeth that look like they've been chewing rocks, and they probably have. You're not smiling anymore, are you? Let's pivot to fashion because you're still wearing your skinny jeans, and they're not doing you any favors. The Egyptians are draped in linen, which is breezy and practical, but you're sweating through your denim like a pig in a sauna. You try to ditch the jeans and go native, but now you're in a kilt, and let's just say your pale, hairy legs aren't winning any beauty contests. Plus, you've got no idea how to tie the damn thing, so you're flashing everyone every time you bend over. The kids are pointing and laughing, and you're pretty sure you just mooned a priest. Great job, superstar. Now, let's talk about medicine because you're definitely gonna need it. You've got a blister from your sandal, a bug bite that's swelling like a golf ball, and a hangover that's making your head feel like it's been hit by a sphinx. You're like, where's the doctor? Oh, honey, the doctor is some dude with a bag of herbs and a questionable degree in chanting. He's gonna rub garlic on your foot. If you're lucky, he'll sacrifice a goat to Sekhmet and pray you don't die. If you're not lucky and your null drill a hole in your skull to let the demons out. You're begging for Advil, but all you get is a pat on the head and a bill for 2 chickens. Let's not forget the bureaucracy. Ancient Egypt loves its paperwork. You can't just wander around without a purpose, or you'll get nabbed by some official who looks like he's auditioning for a villain role. You need a pass, a permit, or at least a bribe, but you've got nothing but lint and bad ideas. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but the scribe just rolls his eyes and writes idiot on his papyrus. Now you're on a list, and not the good kind. You're starting to think jail might be a nice break, but then you see the prison, a pit in the ground with a side of scorpions. Hard pass. By now, you're desperate for a nap, but sleep's not in the cards. You've got to keep working because slacking off means no food, and you're already skin and bones. You're hauling water, grinding grain, your hands are blistered, your back's broken, and you're fantasizing about your old couch like it's a 5-star resort. The sun's still cooking you, the flies are still buzzing, and you're pretty sure you're cursed for stepping on that cat earlier. You're not wrong. The gods are petty and they've got their eyes on you. You're praying for a miracle, but the only thing coming is more work, more heat, and more reasons to cry. Okay, you're still here, clinging to life like a cockroach in a sandstorm. It's late afternoon in ancient Egypt and you're a hot mess literally and figuratively. Your kilt's falling apart, your face is a sunburned tomato, and you're pretty sure you've got dysentery's greatest hits playing in your colon. But the day's not done dragging you through the mud. So let's see what fresh hell awaits. First, let's talk about food again because your stomach's growling louder than a hippo with a hangover. You're hoping for something edible, but dinner's not looking good. The bread's still gritty, the beer's still gross, and the meat you're offered looks like it died of sadness. You're like, is this chicken? And the cook's like, could be pigeon, could be rat, who cares? You take a bite and immediately regret it. Your teeth are screaming, your stomach's staging a coup, and you're pretty sure you just swallowed a bone. Or a claw. You're not eating again, are you? Let's move on to the evening vibe. You're thinking maybe I'll hit up a party, make some friends. Good luck, pal. The social scene in ancient Egypt is cliquey as hell. The nobles are sipping wine and playing board games like they're in a Pinterest mood board while you're stuck with the peasants who are too tired to care about your sparkling personality. You try to join a game of Senate, but you suck at it and now everyone's laughing at you. You're like, it's just Monopoly with sticks, but they're not impressed. You're the loser at the cool kids table and it stings. Speaking of stinging, let's talk about the bugs again. The sun's going down, but the mosquitoes are just getting started. They're swarming you like you're a walking buffet and you're slapping yourself silly trying to fight them off. You're covered in bites and they're itching like a bad Tinder date. The locals? They're chilling because they've built up immunity or just don't care. You, on the other hand, are one bite away from losing your mind. You're starting to think death might be a sweet release. Let's pivot to religion because you can't escape it. The Egyptians are hardcore about their gods, and you're expected to keep up. There's a festival tonight for some deity you've never heard of and you're dragged along because skipping it's basically asking for a curse. You're standing in a crowd, sweating and confused while priests are chanting and waving dead birds around. You're like, what is happening? But nobody's explaining. You accidentally sneezed during a prayer, and now everyone's glaring at you like you just farted in church. You're pretty sure you're cursed again. Great. Now let's talk about crime because ancient Egypt's not exactly a safe space. You're wandering around, trying to find a quiet corner to cry, when some dude with a knife decides you look like an easy mark. You're like, I've got nothing, but he's not buying it. You try to run, but your sandals are basically flip-flops and you trip over a rock. Now you're face down in the dirt, and your wallet's gone. Oh wait, you don't have a wallet. You're just poor and pathetic. The thief takes your kill for the hell of it, and the guards? They're not coming. They're too busy shaking down someone else. Let's talk about shelter because you're homeless now. Your time machine's gone and nobody's offering you a guest room. If you're lucky, you're crashing with a peasant family who hate you because you ate their last onion. If you're not lucky, you're sleeping outside with the dogs and the scorpions. You're curled up in a ball, praying for morning, but the night's cold and you're shivering like a chihuahua in a snowstorm. You're starting to miss your shitty apartment, aren't you? Oh, and let's not forget the supernatural. Ancient Egyptians are obsessed with magic and curses. You're already on thin ice with the gods. But now some old lady's giving you the evil eye because you bumped into her at the market. She's muttering spells, and you're freaking out because you don't know if she's legit or just crazy. Spoiler, she's legit. You're waking up tomorrow with boils or worse. You're begging for an exorcism, but the priest just laughs and hands you a frog to rub on your face. Thanks, dude. By now, you're mentally checked out. You're sitting by the Nile, staring at the water, and wondering if drowning's better than another hour of this. The locals are going about their lives because this is normal for them. They're tough, they're resilient, and they don't need Wi-Fi to survive. You, on the other hand, are a soft, whiny mess who's allergic to hardship. You're not making it to bedtime, are you? But don't worry, the night's got more surprises and they're all bad. Congratulations, you've made it to evening in ancient Egypt, you absolute train wreck. You're naked, cursed, and probably infected with something that doesn't even have a name yet. The sun's setting, but don't get your hopes up for a chill Netflix and scroll vibe. The night's about to kick your ass harder than the day did, and you're already running on fumes and regret. Let's dive into the chaos and see why you're about to yeet yourself back to the future, or at least wish you could. First up, let's talk about the dark. You're used to streetlights and phone screens, but ancient Egypt at night is blacker than your ex's heart. There's no electricity, no flashlights, just some flickering oil lamps if you're lucky. You're stumbling around, tripping over rocks and stepping in who knows what. You're like, where's my phone? But your phone's useless and you're pretty sure a rat just ran over your foot. The locals are fine because they've got eyes like cats and zero fear. You're screaming every time a shadow moves. Spoiler, it's always a scorpion. Speaking of scorpions, the nightlife's not just dark, it's deadly. The bugs come out in full force, and they're not messing around. Mosquitoes are buzzing, fleas are jumping, and you're pretty sure something just crawled into your ear. You're slapping yourself like you're in a bad slapstick comedy, but it's not funny when you're bleeding from 1,000 bites. The locals are sleeping through this like it's no big deal, but you're wide awake, itching, and crying. You're starting to think hell might be an upgrade. Let's talk about sleep because you're desperate for it. You're crashing on the dirt floor of some peasant's hut because nobody's rolling out the red carpet for your sorry ass. The bed is a pile of straw that smells like feet, and your pillow's a rock that's harder than your last breakup. You're tossing and turning, but every move kicks up dust, and now you're coughing like you've got TB. The family you're staying with is snoring loud enough to wake Anubis, and their kid keeps kicking you in the ribs. You're like, can I get 5 minutes of peace? But peace doesn't exist here. Oh, and good luck sleeping through the noise. Ancient Egypt's not quiet at night. Dogs are barking, donkeys are braying, and some dude's chanting prayers at 2 a.m. like he's auditioning for a TED Talk. You're begging for earplugs, but the best you get is a rag to stuff in your ears. It smells like fish, and you're pretty sure it's been used for something gross, but you're too tired to care. You're not dreaming of sugar plums tonight, you're dreaming of antibiotics and a shower. Let's pivot to the social drama, because you're still trying to make friends. You're at some late-night gathering, hoping to bond over warm beer and bad decisions. The locals are telling stories about gods and monsters, and you're like, cool, I've seen Stranger Things. But when it's your turn, you start rambling about Wi-Fi and Uber, and they're looking at you like you're possessed. You try to recover with a joke, but your "why did the mummy cross the road" bit lands like a wet fart. Now you're the weird guy, and nobody's sharing their beer. Great job, champ. Speaking of mummies, let's talk about death, because it's everywhere. Ancient Egyptians are obsessed with the afterlife, and you're starting to get why. Life here sucks so hard. They're already planning their eternal vacation. You're at this gathering, and some dude's casually talking about his tomb like it's his dream condo. You're like, bro, you're 25, chill, but he's got a point. Half the people you've met today are coughing up blood or missing a limb. You're starting to think you're next, especially since you've got that weird rash from the Nile. You're praying it's not leprosy, but let's be real, it probably is. Let's not forget the hygiene situation because it's getting worse. You haven't bathed since morning and you're starting to smell like a landfill. You're begging for a wipe, but the locals are like, just use your hand. Your hand's already been through enough and you're not about to add poop mitt to its resume. You're dreaming of a hot shower, but the best you get is a bucket of lukewarm Nile water that's got more floaters than a public pool. You're not clean, you're just wet and sad. Oh, and let's talk about the law because you're definitely breaking it. You've been wandering around, touching stuff you shouldn't, and now some guard's got his eye on you. You're like, I'm innocent. But innocence doesn't mean shit when you've got no papyrus to prove who you are. You try to bribe him with your phone, but he thinks it's a cursed brick and smashes it. Now you're in a cage, and your cellmate's a dude who smells like onions and keeps muttering about Sobuk. You're not sleeping tonight, are you? By now, you're done. You're sitting in the dark. The locals are thriving because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The night's not over, but you're already You're still here, you masochistic fool. It's the dead of night in ancient Egypt, and you're a walking tragedy. You're itchy, smelly, and pretty sure you're cursed by at least 3 gods. Your kilt's in tatters, your stomach's staging a full-on rebellion, and you're starting to think the afterlife might be a glow-up compared to this. But the night's got more ways to ruin you, so let's keep this disaster tour going. First, let's talk about the cold. You thought Egypt was all sun and sweat, but the desert at night is colder than your ex's texts. You're shivering in your flimsy kilt, hugging yourself like a sad burrito, but there's no blanket, no hoodie, just you and your regrets. The locals are bundled up in wool or just used to freezing, but you're not built for this. Your teeth are chattering, and you're pretty sure your nipples could cut glass. You're begging for a fire, but the best you get is a pile of dung that smells like hell and barely burns. You're not warm, you're just smoky and miserable. Speaking of miserable, let's talk about the wild. You thought the daytime animals were bad, but the night shift's worse. Jackals are howling. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are sleeping like babies because they've made peace with the fact that nature's trying to kill them. You're wide awake, clutching a stick and praying it's not a cobra. You're not surviving this, are you? Let's pivot to the social scene because you're still trying to fit in. There's a late-night ritual happening and you're dragged along because skipping it means bad juju. You're standing in a circle, holding a candle that's dripping wax on your hand, while some priest is chanting about Osiris and waving a dead fish. You're like, this is weird, but you're too tired to run. You accidentally drop your candle and now everyone's yelling at you for disrespecting the gods. You're like, it was an accident, but they're not buying it. You're definitely cursed now. Great job, idiot. Speaking of curses, let's talk about the supernatural. Ancient Egyptians are all about magic and you're starting to believe it's real. That rash you've got? It's not just a rash, it's a sign. That weird feeling in your gut? Not just the beer, it's a hex. Some old lady's been glaring at you all day, and you're pretty sure she's got a voodoo doll with your face on it. You're begging for protection, but the best you get is a charm that smells like feet and probably doesn't work. You're not sleeping tonight, are you? Let's talk about food because you're starving again. You're hoping for a midnight snack, but the options are grim. There's some leftover bread that's harder than a pharaoh's ego, and a bowl of something that looks like soup but smells like despair. You're like, is this safe? And the cook's like, probably. You take a sip and immediately regret it. Your stomach's like, we're done here, and you're sprinting for the nearest bush. You're not eating again, are you? Oh, and let's not forget the hygiene situation. You're filthier than ever and there's no chance of cleaning up. You're covered in dust, sweat, and something sticky you don't want to identify. You're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far and the water's probably cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your kilt, but now your kilt's dirtier than your face. You're not cleanery, just spreading the grime around. You're starting to miss soap like it's an old friend. Let's talk about the law again because you're still in trouble. That guard from earlier? He's back and he's not happy. You're like, I didn't do anything, but he's got a papyrus with your name on it, or at least a drawing of a dumbass who looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating dates and looking at you like you're a cockroach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to clean the latrines. You're like, can I appeal? And he's like, LOL, what's an appeal? You're not getting out of this, are you? By now, you're done. You're sitting in the dark, freezing and terrified, and wondering why you ever thought time travel was cool. The locals are sleeping because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The night's not over, but you're already praying for a quick death or at least a time machine to take you home. You're still alive, you stubborn idiot. It's the wee hours of the morning in ancient Egypt, and you're a walking catastrophe. You're freezing, filthy, and pretty sure you've got a demon living in your colon. The stars are out, but they're not inspiring you, just reminding you how screwed you are. The day's almost over, but not before it throws a few more punches. Let's see what's left to ruin your life. First, let's talk about the exhaustion. You haven't slept in what feels like a year, and your body's shutting down. Your eyes are burning, your legs are jelly, and you're pretty sure your brain's on strike. You're trying to stay awake because falling asleep means letting your guard down and you're not ready to wake up with a scorpion in your mouth. The locals are snoring because they're used to this. You're hallucinating a Starbucks barista calling your name. You're not making it to dawn, are you? Speaking of dawn, let's talk about the gods again. You're supposed to pray at sunrise, but you're too tired to care. The locals are up, kneeling and chanting, while you're just sitting there, muttering, can I skip this? You can't. You accidentally yawned during a hymn, and now everyone's glaring at you like you just mooned RA. You're like, sorry, I'm tired, but they're not having it. You're definitely cursed now. You're starting to think the gods are just trolling you at this point. Let's pivot to the social scene because you're still trying to make friends. You're at some pre-dawn gathering, hoping to bond over shared misery. The locals are swapping stories about their crops and their kids. And you're like, I had a blog once. They don't care. You try to tell a story, but your tale about binge-watching Netflix falls flat. You're the weird guy again, and nobody's sharing their bread. You're starting to miss your old life, where people at least pretended to like you. Speaking of bread, let's talk about food one last time. You're starving, but the options are worse than ever. There's some stale bread that's basically a rock, and a bowl of something that looks like porridge but tastes like regret. You're like, is this edible? And the cook's like, and maybe. You take a bite and immediately regret it. Your stomach's like, we're out, and you're sprinting for the bushes again. You're not eating anymore, are you? Let's talk about hygiene because it's hit rock bottom. You're covered in dirt, sweat, and something that you're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far, and you're pretty sure it's cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your kilt, but now your kilt's basically a biohazard. You're not clean, you're just a walking landfill. You're starting to miss soap like it's your soulmate. Oh, and let's not forget the animals. The jackals are still howling, the snakes are still slithering, and you're pretty sure something just bit your ankle. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are sleeping because they've made peace with the wildlife. You're wide awake, clutching a rock and praying it's not a cobra. You're not surviving this, are you? Let's talk about the law one last time because you're still in trouble. That guard from earlier? He's back, and he's got friends. You're like, I didn't do anything, but they've got a papyrus with your face on it, or at least a stick figure that looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating figs and looking at you like you're a roach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to haul bricks at dawn. You're like, by now you're done. You're sitting in the dark, freezing and terrified, and wondering why you ever thought ancient Egypt was cool. The locals are sleeping because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The night's almost over, but you're already praying for a miracle or at least a quick death. You're still here, you absolute legender. It's almost dawn in ancient Egypt and you're a walking zombie. You're covered in bites, curses, and probably a few mystery diseases. Your kilt's gone, your dignity's gone, and you're pretty sure your soul's checked out. The day's almost over, but not before it gives you one last kick in the nuts. Let's wrap this nightmare up and see why you're never time traveling again. First, let's talk about the sunrise. You're supposed to greet RA with prayers and offerings, but you're too broken to care. The locals are up, chanting and bowing, while you're just sitting there, muttering, "Can I go home?" You can't. You accidentally trip over a sacred statue and now everyone's screaming at you for blaspheming. You're like, it was an accident, but they're not buying it. You're definitely cursed now again. You're starting to think the gods are just screwing with you for fun. Speaking of screwing, let's talk about the social scene one last time. You're at some dawn gathering, hoping to make peace with the locals. They're swapping stories about their crops and their gods, and you're like, I had a TikTok once. They don't care. You try to tell a story, but your tale about your old job falls flat. You're the weird guy again, and you're starting to miss your old life, where people at least fake smiled at you. Let's talk about food, because you're starving again. You're hoping for something edible, but the options are grim. There's some bread that's harder than a pharaoh's heart and a bowl of something that looks like soup but smells like death. You're like, is this safe? And the cook's like, probably. You take a sip and immediately regret it. Your stomach's like, we're done. And you're sprinting for the bushes again. You're not eating anymore, are you? Oh, and let's not forget the hygiene situation. You're filthier than a landfill and there's no chance of cleaning up. You're covered in dust, sweat, and something sticky you don't want to identify. You're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far and the water's probably cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your hand, but now your hand's dirtier than your face. You're not cleanery, just a walking biohazard. You're starting to miss soap like it's your mom. Let's talk about the animals one last time. The jackals are still howling, the snakes are still slithering, and you're pretty sure something just crawled up your leg. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are praying, because they've made peace with the wildlife. You're wide awake, clutching a stick and praying it's not a cobra. You're not surviving this, are you? Speaking of surviving, let's talk about the law one last time. That guard from earlier? He's back and he's pissed. You're like, I didn't do anything, but they've got a papyrus with your name on it, or at least a drawing of a loser who looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating dates and looking at you like you're a roach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to haul bricks for the rest of your life. You're like, can I appeal? And he's like, LOL, what's an appeal? You're not getting out of this, are you? By now you're done. You're sitting in the sand, broken, and the locals are thriving because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The day's almost over, but you're not celebrating. You're just praying for a time machine to take you home, or at least a quick death to end this nightmare. Dawn's breaking, and you're still here, you absolute mad lad. You're a wreck covered in dirt, curses, and probably a few parasites that'll name their kids after you. You've survived almost a full day in ancient Egypt, but survived is generous. You're barely functioning, and the universe is clearly laughing at you. Let's see what final tortures this hellscape has in store before you either escape or become a mummy's sidekick. First up, let's talk about the morning vibe. The locals are up praising RA like he's dropping a new album while you're just slumped against a rock, muttering, "I need coffee." Coffee's not a thing, genius. You're offered more of that gritty bread and warm beer, but your stomach's like, "Touch that," and we're staging a walkout. You're starving, but you'd rather eat your kilt than choke down another bite of sand-flavored loaf. You're starting to fantasize about a drive-thru and it's breaking your heart. Speaking of heartbreak, let's talk about the work. You're supposed to be hauling bricks or digging ditches, but your body's done. Your hands are blistered, your back screaming, and you're pretty sure your legs are on strike. The overseer's cracking his whip, and you're like, "Bro, I'm trying." But he's not impressed. You drop a brick and now he's yelling at you in a language you don't understand. You're pretty sure he just called you a donkey's ass and you're too tired to argue. You're not working today, are you? Let's pivot to the social scene because you're still trying to make friends. The locals are gathered for some morning ritual, and you're dragged along because skipping it means more curses. You're standing there, swaying from exhaustion, while some priest is waving a goose and chanting about Horus. You're like, this is too much, but you're too weak to run. You accidentally step on someone's foot and now they're cursing you out. You're like, "Sorry, I'm dying." But they're not buying it. You're the village pariah now. Great job, champ. Speaking of curses, let's talk about the supernatural again. That old lady from earlier? She's still glaring at you and you're pretty sure she's got a shrine dedicated to your downfall. Your rash is spreading, your head's pounding, and you're starting to think you're possessed. You're begging for an exorcism, but the priest just hands you a fish to rub on your face. You're like, this isn't helping, but he's already moved on to the next idiot. You're not getting uncursed today, are you? Let's talk about hygiene because it's a lost cause. You're filthier than a pig in a mudslide, and there's no hope of cleaning up. You're covered in sweat, sand, and something that might be bird poop. You're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far, and you're pretty sure it's cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your hand, but now your hand's a biohazard. You're not clean, you're just a walking health code violation. You're starting to miss showers like they're your ex. Oh, and let's not forget the animals. The crocodiles are still lurking, the snakes are still slithering, and you're pretty sure something just bit your toe. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are praying, because they've made peace with the wildlife. You're wide awake, clutching a rock and praying it's not a scorpion. You're not surviving this, are you? Let's talk about the law one last time, because you're still in deep shit. That guard from earlier, he's back, and he's got a grudge. You're like, I didn't do anything, but they've got a papyrus with your face on either at least a stick figure that looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating grapes and looking at you like you're a roach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to clean the canals. You're like, can I appeal? And he's like, LOL, what's an appeal? You're not getting out of this, are you? By now, you're done. You're sitting in the sand, broken and terrified, and wondering why you ever thought ancient Egypt was cool. The locals are thriving because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The day's almost over, but you're not celebrating. You're just praying for a miracle or at least a quick death. You're still kicking, you absolute lunatic. It's mid-morning in ancient Egypt and you're a walking apocalypse. You're covered in bites, dirt, and probably a few ancient STDs. You've almost made it through a full day, but made it is a stretch. You're a shell of your former self, and the universe is clearly enjoying your suffering. Let's see what final horrors this desert hellhole has in store. First up, let's talk about the heat again. The sun's back, and it's angrier than ever. It's blasting you like you owe it money, and there's no shade unless you're cool with hiding under a pile of dung. You're sweating buckets, your skin's peeling, and you're pretty sure you're half-baked. You're chugging Nile water, but it's like drinking soup, and your stomach's like, we're out. You're sprinting for the bushes again, and the flies are throwing a rave on your misery. You're not surviving this. Speaking of misery, let's talk about the work. You're supposed to be hauling mud or grinding grain, but your body's done. Your hands are raw, your back's broken, and you're pretty sure your soul's on vacation. The overseer's cracking his whip, and you're like, bro, I'm dying. But he's not impressed. You drop a basket, and now he's yelling at you in hieroglyphs. You're pretty sure he just called you a camel's butt and you're too tired to care. You're not working today, are you? Let's pivot to the social scene because you're still trying to fit in. The locals are gathered for some mid-morning ritual, and you're dragged along because skipping it means more curses. You're standing there, swaying from dehydration, while some priest is waving a duck and chanting about ISIS. You're like, this is insane, but you're too weak to run. You accidentally sneezed during a prayer, and now everyone's glaring at you like you just farted in a temple. You're like, sorry, I'm dying, but they're not buying it. You're the village idiot now. Great job, champ. Speaking of curses, let's talk about the supernatural again. That old lady from earlier? She's still out there, and you're pretty sure she's got a hit out on you. Your rash is spreading, your head's throbbing, and you're starting to think you're cursed for real. You're begging for an exorcism, but the priest just hands you a frog to rub on your face. You're like, this isn't helping, but he's already moved on. You're not getting uncursed today, are you? Let's talk about hygiene because it's a distant memory. You're filthier than a sewer, and there's no hope of cleaning up. You're covered in sweat, sand, and something that might be blood. You're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far, and you're pretty sure it's cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your hand. You're not clean, you're just a walking plague. You're starting to miss showers like they're your family. Oh, and let's not forget the animals. The crocodiles are still lurking, the snakes are still slithering, and you're pretty sure something just bit your ankle. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are praying, because they've made peace with the wildlife. You're wide awake, clutching a rock and praying it's not a scorpion. You're not surviving this. Let's talk about the law one last time because you're still in trouble. That guard from earlier? He's back and he's got a vendetta. You're like, I didn't do anything. But they've got a papyrus with your face on it, or at least a stick figure that looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating figs and looking at you like you're a roach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to clean the latrines. You're like, can I appeal? By now you're done. You're sitting in the sand, broken and terrified, and wondering why you ever thought ancient Egypt was cool. The locals are thriving because they're built for this. You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. The day's almost over, but you're not celebrating. You're just praying for a miracle or at least a quick death. You've made it to the final stretch, you absolute miracle of stupidity. It's almost noon in ancient Egypt and you're a walking corpse. You're covered in bites, curses, and probably a few plagues that'll be named after you. You've survived a full day barely, but the universe is still giggling at your pain. Let's wrap this torture fest up and see why you're never, ever coming back. First up, let's talk about the heat one last time. The sun's at its peak and it's roasting you like a marshmallow at a bonfire. You're sweating so much you're basically a human fountain and your skin's peeling like a bad tattoo. You're chugging Nile water, but it's like drinking lava, and your stomach's like, we're done. You're sprinting for the bushes again, and the flies are throwing a festival on your misery. You're not surviving this, are you? Speaking of misery, let's talk about the work one last time. You're supposed to be hauling bricks or cleaning canals, but your body's checked out. Your hands are shredded, your back's a pretzel, and you're pretty sure your soul's on a beach somewhere. The overseer's cracking his whip and you're like, bro, I'm dead, but he's not impressed. You drop a brick and now he's yelling at you in hieroglyphs. You're pretty sure he just called you a hyena's ass and you're too tired to care. You're not working today, are you? Let's pivot to the social scene one last time because you're still trying to fit in. The locals are gathered for some noon ritual and you're dragged along because skipping it means more curses. You're standing there, swaying from dehydration, while some priest is waving a pigeon and chanting about Anubis. You're like, this is hell, but you're too weak to run. You accidentally coughed during a prayer, and now everyone's glaring at you like you just shat in a temple. You're like, sorry, I'm dying, but they're not buying it. You're the village loser now. Great job, champ. Speaking of curses, let's talk about the supernatural one last time. That old lady from earlier? She's still out there, and you're pretty sure she's got a contract on your soul. Your rash is spreading, your head's throbbing, and you're starting to think you're possessed. You're begging for an exorcism, but the priest just hands you a lizard to rub on your face. You're like, this isn't helping, but he's already moved on. You're not getting uncursed today, are you? Let's talk about hygiene because it's a myth at this point. You're filthier than a dumpster, and there's no hope of cleaning up. You're covered in sweat, sand, and something that might be pus. You're begging for a bath, but the Nile's too far, and you're pretty sure it's cursed anyway. You're wiping your face with your hand, but now your hand's a biohazard. You're not clean, you're just a walking plague. You're starting to miss showers like they're your kids. Oh, and let's not forget the animals. The crocodiles are still lurking, the snakes are still slithering, and you're pretty sure something just bit your neck. You're screaming, but nobody cares. The locals are praying because they've made peace with the wildlife. You? You're wide awake, clutching a rock and praying it's not a cobra. You're not surviving this, are you? Let's talk about the law one last time, because you're still screwed. That guard from earlier? He's back, and he's got a vendetta. You're like, I didn't do anything. But they've got a papyrus with your face on it, or at least a stick figure that looks like you. You're dragged to some official who's eating dates and looking at you like you're a roach. You try to explain you're a time traveler, but he just laughs and sentences you to haul bricks forever. You're like, can I appeal? And he's like, LOL, what's an appeal? You're not getting out of this, are you? And that's it. You're done. You're sitting in the sand, broken, cursed, and probably dying. The locals are thriving because they're built for this. You? You're a soft, modern mess who's allergic to everything. You've survived a day in ancient Egypt, but at what cost? Your dignity's gone, your body's a wreck, and you're pretty sure you're on every god's hit list. You're never time traveling again, are you? Go home, hug your Wi-Fi, and thank the universe you're not stuck in 25. Peace out, you absolute disaster. Hey guys. Tonight we journey back thousands of years to the banks of the Nile to a civilization known for pyramids, pharaohs, and gods that watched your every move. But behind the gold masks and grand temples, today we're asking what would happen if you lived just one day in ancient Egypt. Because let me tell you, the sun isn't the only thing that will roast you alive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Welcome to ancient Egypt, land of pyramids, gods, and relentless ultraviolet violence. Before you even open your eyes, the sun is already blasting through your reed hut, like it's auditioning for the role of unforgiving sky god. There are no curtains, no shades, and certainly no air conditioning. Just the raw, unforgiving heat of the desert, baking everything, including you, by breakfast. You're lying on a straw mat with a linen sheet that's more suggestion than protection. The Nile breeze you were promised in all those travel documentaries. Yeah, it's gone. Probably died sometime around 2800 BC. By the time you stumble outside, the temperature is already flirting with 90 degrees Fahrenheit or around 32 C. And it's not even mid-morning. The sun doesn't just shine in ancient Egypt. It attacks your linen tunic. Useless. It's like wearing tissue paper in a sauna. And don't even think about sunscreen. There's no aloe vera, no SPF 50, not even a floppy hat with a logo from a beach resort. Ancient Egyptians did have protective oils, but unless you're wealthy or work in a temple, you're not getting any of it. Your best option, smear yourself with mud or crocodile dung, which apparently might keep you from turning into a human torch. Emphasis on might. By midday, the stones under your feet are hot enough to cook lentils. Shade is a luxury. Trees are rare. You might get a little relief hiding behind a mud brick wall, but even that wall is sweating by now. You, on the other hand, look like someone threw you into a clay oven and forgot to set a timer. And you better not complain. The sun god is watching. And in ancient Egypt, the sun wasn't just weather. It was divine authority. The hotter the day, the more powerful Ra was feeling. So basically, if you're melting, it's a spiritual compliment. In short, surviving one day in ancient Egypt requires hydration, humility, and an ironclad tolerance for feeling like a roast chicken. And this is just the morning. You're finally out of bed, or rather off your scratchy straw mat. And the good news is the Nile is just a short walk away. The bad news, you can already smell it before you see it. Yes, the mighty Nile, the life-giver of ancient Egypt, revered as sacred, the reason civilization here even exists. But let's be honest, it also smells like a fish market had a bad breakup with a swamp. The banks are buzzing with flies, frogs, and things that probably shouldn't have legs, but do. Still, this is where you bathe. Soap hasn't been invented yet, and even if it had, you couldn't afford it. Instead, you lather yourself in the freshest cleansing technology of the day. Sand. That's right. Exfoliation the Egyptian way. Just rub yourself down with coarse grains and call it skincare. It's like nature's sandpaper, but less effective. Washing clothes also done in the Nile. And by washing, we mean pounding them against rocks while praying that a crocodile doesn't mistake your laundry for a tasty midday snack. Oh, and just to make things more fun, let's not forget the occasional sewage runoff from upstream. Remember, people, livestock, and the occasional funeral boat all share this river. And yet, somehow this is considered clean. You scrub, rinse, and emerge feeling slightly less sticky and only moderately more worried about leeches. If you're a city dweller in Memphis or Thebes, you might be lucky enough to use a public basin or cistern, but for everyone else, it's Nile or nothing. And don't expect privacy. This is a public bathing space shared by families, neighbors, livestock, and the odd ibis pecking around your ankles like it pays rent. Water jars are filled and balanced on heads, carried back to your mud brick house before the midday heat turns the clay into toast. It's a daily ritual, spiritual, necessary, and slightly traumatic. So, yes, the Nile is sacred. It feeds you, cleans you, and quenches your thirst. But let's not pretend it's a sparkling oasis. In reality, it's part miracle, part biohazard, and all. By now, you've bathed in the crocodile-infested Nile. You've sandpapered yourself semi-clean, and your body feels like a baked fig. Time for breakfast. The most important and least glamorous meal of your ancient Egyptian day. Let's set expectations. There are no eggs Benedict, no fruit bowls, and absolutely no iced lattes. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is less of a culinary event and more of a tactical refueling operation. You sit on a low stool if you have one or just squat in the corner like everyone else. The centerpiece of your meal. Bread. Lots of it. Dense, coarse, and often as chewy as a leather sandal. It's made from emma wheat or barley and baked in clay ovens that may or may not be shared by the local rats. And don't be surprised if there's sand in your slice. Not as a topping, just an uninvited ingredient from the grinding stones. A daily dose of minerals, you could say. Then comes the beer. But don't get excited. This isn't crisp, bubbly craft ale. This is thick, cloudy, lukewarm, liquid bread. More porridge than pint. It's packed with calories and vaguely fermented. A medieval smoothie with the faint taste of sour cereal and survival. Even children drink it, not to be edgy, but because it's safer than water. At least the brewing process boils out the parasites, unlike the Nile, which we just discussed is basically a petri dish. If you're lucky, and we mean very lucky, you might get an onion or a few dried dates to go with your carbon foam combo. Protein only if someone... And as you chew your rock-like loaf and sip your grain sludge, flies buzz around you like it's a buffet, because it is. For them. You swat at them with one hand, hold your cup with the other, and try not to think too hard about the fact that this is likely the best meal you'll have today. Breakfast in ancient Egypt isn't about flavor, it's about function. It fuels your body just enough to survive until the next time someone hands you another sand-infused brick of bread. Bon appetit, you've had your gritty bread, your chunky beer, and just enough rest to call yourself functional. Now it's time to work. And trust me, ancient Egyptian, unless you're a scribe, priest, or royalty, which let's be honest, you're not. Your job is pure muscle and dust, no air-conditioned cubicle, no coffee breaks, no ergonomic chairs, just sweat, sand, and a constant risk of collapsing before noon. If you're a farmer, you'll be ankle-deep in Nile mud by sunrise, yanking weeds, or planting barley under the eye of an overseer whose hobby seems to be yelling. You use wooden plows, crude sickles, and your bare hands. If your back hurts, congratulations. That means it's working. If you're a laborer, things get even more biblical. Imagine hauling multi-ton stones for temple construction under a blazing sun while barefoot up ramps made of gravel and prayer. There's no ocean here. You trip. That's a broken ankle and a shrug from the foreman. Working on tombs. That's another level of grind. You're hammering limestone, chiseling out burial chambers for people who will get to rest longer than you ever will. And if you mess up a pharaoh's tomb, let's just say job security might involve a sealed chamber and a curse. And if you're a woman, you're not off the hook. Domestic work is also physical labor. Grinding grain, hauling water, weaving linen, caring for kids, and still helping in the fields. Your break is when the baby naps for 7 minutes. While you prepare dinner, you eat on the go. You wipe sweat with your tunic. You keep moving because slowing down means falling behind. And falling behind means someone else gets your grain quota and you get the blame. There's no clocking out. The sun is your supervisor. When it finally sinks behind the horizon, You crawl home half alive, dust-caked, and dreaming of softer sandals and a less aggressive sun god. Work in ancient Egypt isn't just hard. It's endless. It's a full-body commitment to survival day after day until your body gives out or your overseer decides you're not worth feeding. And that's not even the worst of it. After sweating your soul out in the fields or quarry, you might be tempted to grumble. Maybe something small, a little "this job stinks," or "why am I doing this again?" Stop right there. Because in ancient Egypt, complaining isn't just frowned upon. It's potentially treason. Why? Because your boss isn't just a ruler. He's a literal god. The pharaoh isn't some guy who got elected or born into a lucky family. He's the human embodiment of Horus, son of Ra, chosen by the heavens to rule over Egypt and keep Madat, divine cosmic order, intact. In other words, if the river floods well this year, thank the pharaoh. If it doesn't, well, maybe you didn't pray hard enough. Questioning his authority isn't just rude, it's blasphemy. Speaking ill of him could land you a date with a whip, a set of shackles, or an early trip to the underworld with none of your favorite burial goods. You see his face everywhere, on statues. His name is chanted in rituals. His image is painted larger than everyone else's in every mural. That's not artistic exaggeration. That's law. And don't expect to ever see him. If you're a commoner, the closest you'll get is watching a golden bark float by during a religious festival. Blink and he's gone. Back to a palace you'll never enter, surrounded by officials, guards, scribes, and enough gold to finance a small civilization. Which, fun fact, he basically does. If you're lucky enough to work on a royal project, say a tomb, a temple, or a statue the size of a mountain, you serve with divine joy. At least that's what the state says. You say it too because pretending you're honored to carve stone for 14 hours a day is safer than the alternative. And don't even think about rebellion. Pharaohs crush uprisings faster than you can say dynasty. Just ask the last village that tried to withhold taxes. Oh wait, you can't. It no longer exists. So yes, the pharaoh is divine. And you? You're just lucky to be allowed to sweat in his name. Now get back to work. If you thought surviving under the sun was hard, just wait until you realize that in ancient Egypt, sand is your roommate, co-worker, seasoning, and mortal enemy. It's everywhere. In your clothes, in your bed, in your food. There is no escaping it. You could be working, praying, sleeping, or minding your own business in the market. And suddenly, a gust of hot wind sweeps by and turns your face into a grainy exfoliation experiment you didn't ask for. Let's start with the clothes. You wear linen. It's light, breathable, and about as effective at keeping sand out as a screen door is at holding back soup. It slides down your tunic, clings to your skin, and somehow finds its way into places you didn't know had creases. Eating? Good luck. Every loaf of bread is basically a sand trap. Since flour was ground between stone slabs, little bits of grit made their way into the dough. Egyptians didn't just eat their wheat, they ate their millstones too. It's why ancient dental remains are often worn flat like river rocks. Imagine chewing your breakfast while also filing your MERS daily. And if you thought your house was a sand-free zone, think again. Your mud brick home has gaps, crevices, and windows with no glass. Perfect portals for wind-blown sand. Your floors are covered. Your cooking pots are full. Your bed is basically a sandpit disguised as furniture. Shoes optional at best. Most Egyptians walked barefoot, meaning you're always one step away from turning your feet into battered leather sandals. If you do have footwear, it's usually a basic pair of sandals made from reeds. Fashionable, perhaps. Protective? Not remotely. Then there are sandstorms. Egypt's version of a slap from the gods. Sudden, swirling, blinding. One moment you're talking to a friend, the next you're spitting dust and feeling like someone dumped an entire beach into your eye sockets. Visibility drops to zero and everyone around you turns into vaguely coughing silhouettes. In short, sand is the roommate who never leaves, the spice in every meal, and the silent enemy of your eyes, lungs, and dignity. It's not just the backdrop of your life. It's part of your body now. And no, you can't wash it off. You already tried. In ancient Egypt, religion isn't just a weekend activity. It's the operating system for everything. Your job, your diet, your hygiene routine, your bedtime rituals, all dictated by gods who seem to have very specific opinions. First, understand this. The gods are everywhere. Your town has temples to a dozen different deities, each responsible for some vital function. There's RA, who pilots these headed god of wisdom is in charge of scribes and moon calendars. Sabak, part crocodile, part nightmare fuel, guards the Nile. And Badet, the cat goddess, basically runs public relations. Forget personal freedom. Your daily routine revolves around pleasing them. Wake up, thank RA, spill some beer, apologize to Hathor, stub your toe, curse quietly, or risk attracting a spirit with a grudge. Before meals, you offer a bit of food to the gods. Before bed, you pray that Set, god of chaos, doesn't toss your house into existential disarray overnight. Even funerals are multi-day affairs where the deceased must pass tests, avoid demons, and prove they were morally decent or risk eternal erasure. Speaking of the afterlife, ancient Egyptians took it very seriously. You don't just die and move on. You must pass a judgment process involving your heart being weighed against a feather of truth. If your heart's heavier because of lies, cruelty, or maybe stealing someone's goat, you're eaten by Amit, a creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the legs of your worst nightmare. So yes, even in death, you're still on probation. But here's the twist. This complex belief system isn't depressing. It's comforting. Egyptians believed life was part of a cosmic balance. And if you followed the rituals and upheld Mahat, the principle of truth and order, you had a chance at a peaceful eternity, complete with food, family, and maybe a boat. Of course, the richer you were, the more gods seemed to notice you. Temples were massive, priests were powerful, and peasants, well, they just hoped the gods were feeling generous that day. Because in ancient Egypt, faith isn't optional. It's your job description, your insurance plan, and your travel itinerary for the next life. So, you've stepped on something sharp, got bit by something weird, or caught something contagious, which in ancient Egypt is basically Tuesday. Time to seek medical care. Just don't expect a waiting room or a sterile environment. You're about to be healed with a combination of spells, herbs, and sheer optimism. First, you'll be taken to a doctor. And to be fair, they were some of the most advanced in the ancient world. They had surgical tools, medical texts, and a decent understanding of anatomy. But here's the catch. Science in ancient Egypt always came with a heavy dose of magic. You're given a pus made of honey, moldy bread, and crushed herbs. A honey actually is antibacterial, but before applying it, the healer will chant a protective spell just to be safe, because you never know when your stomach cramps are actually the result of a spiteful ghost or an angry god. Have a headache? You might get a dose of crushed onions rubbed into your scalp while someone recites a hymn to though. Let's smear cow dung mixed with dates on your chest and see what happens. Eye infection. Time for a paste of lizard blood, ochre, and beer. Plus a prayer to Horus. Surgery. It did happen sometimes. Abscesses were drained, bones were set, and wounds were stitched with linen thread. But there's no anesthesia. Just a sharp knife and a friend to hold your shoulders down while you scream into a mud brick pillow. Dentistry, not great. Remember all that sand in the bread? Your teeth are worn down by your 20s. If one gets infected, your options are 1, live with it. 2, die from it, or 3, have it pulled with something resembling pliers made by a blacksmith with low standards. And let's not forget the amulets. Whether you're giving birth, getting stitched up, or just sneezing too loud, a good doctor/priest will probably hang a charm around your neck. Just in case the real issue is an invisible serpent spirit curled around your spleen. So, yes, Egyptian medicine had its moments, but mostly you'd better believe in the gods because your band-aid is literally a prayer. Here's a plot twist most people don't expect. Ancient Egyptian women had more rights than many women in later civilizations. They could own property, run businesses, file for divorce, and even take a man to court. Sounds progressive, right? But before you pack your bags for a time-trained girl boss vacation, hold up. Because while the legal status might impress you, the day-to-day reality not so glamorous. If you're a woman in ancient Egypt, you probably wake up before sunrise. You're grinding grain by hand using a giant. Then it's off to haul water from the Nile, cook breakfast, care for children, manage the household, feed animals, and if needed, help in the fields. You're a one-woman workforce in linen. There's no me time, no spa days, and definitely no maternity leave. Childbirth is risky and painful. Midwives are helpful. Sure, but there are no epidurals, no disinfectant, and no push playlists featuring relaxing harps. You give birth in a hot room with, let's talk fashion. Linen dresses are light and breathable, but there's no underwear and no shoes. The sun scorches your skin, the sand grinds into everything, and the bugs think you're an all-you-can-eat buffet. Want makeup? Great. Egyptian women did wear cosmetics, but it's lead-based and applied with sticks that look suspiciously like toothpicks. Now, if you're lucky enough to be born into a wealthy family, things are better. You might read, write, manage estate accounts, or become a priestess. If you're born royal, you could even become pharaoh like Hatshepsut or Cleopatra, who ruled with brilliance and terrifying eyeliner. But if you're poor, your status may be legal, but your reality is physical. You work, sweat, bend, carry, birth, bury, and pray. You're not chained by law, but by survival. Still, Egyptian women had agency, and that mattered. They could speak in court, keep their inheritance, and didn't become property when they married. Compared to many ancient societies, that's huge. So, yes, Egyptian women had rights, but comfort, that's reserved for statues and goddesses. And not the woman elbow deep in dough while swatting flies off a toddler. You made it through another grueling day in ancient Egypt. You ate your gritty bread, hauled your buckets, avoided divine wrath, and maybe even dodged a sandstorm. Time to relax, right? Wrong. Because in ancient Egypt, your real test begins after you die. Death isn't the end. It's just the beginning of an incredibly bureaucratic, multi-phase journey through the underworld. And if you thought the labor overseer was strict, wait until you meet the gods of judgment. First, your soul takes a trip to the Hall of Mahet. Here, before a tribunal of 42 deities, you must proclaim your innocence in what's basically the oldest legal deposition in history. You say things like, "I did not steal. I did not lie. I did not covet my neighbor's donkey," all while hoping the gods buy it. Then comes the heart test. Literally, your heart, believed to be the seat of the soul, is placed on a scale opposite the feather of Mahet, the symbol of truth, justice, and balance. If your heart is heavier than the feather, well, that means you've lived a wicked life. Enter Amit. Part lion, part crocodile, part hippo. All terrifying. She doesn't arrest you. She doesn't find you. She eats your soul, destroying it forever. No afterlife, no second chances, just eternal non-existence, which in a culture obsessed with eternity is the ultimate punishment. And it gets better. You can doom yourself not just by actions, but by words. One wrong confession, one forgotten line during your judgment, and boom, spiritual obliteration. It's like an open book test where failure means getting devoured by a mythological death hybrid. If you do pass, congratulations. You get to enter the field of reeds, a peaceful, idealized version of Egypt where your soul lives forever with boats, with crops, with family, and presumably with fewer sand fleas. But the stakes enormous. And that's why Egyptians obsessed over tomb preparation, funeral rites, and magical texts like the Book of the Dead. A spiritual cheat sheet full of prayers, spells, and helpful tips like don't insult the crocodile god. So yes, the afterlife might be beautiful. One curse word, one unpaid temple tax, and your next stop is lunch for Amit. Sleep tight. If there's one small mercy in ancient Egypt, it's this linen. Blessed breathable linen. Your entire wardrobe and everyone else's is made from this plant-based fabric. It's light, cool, and lets your skin breathe in the scorching heat. That's the good news. The bad news, that's pretty much where the comfort ends. Whether you're a farmer, builder, priest, or vendor, you're wearing the same outfit every day. For men, a short white kilt or loincloth. For women, a straight sleeveless linen dress, sometimes held up by straps, sometimes not. If you're upper class, you might have pleat or beads or fancy patterns. If you're not, it's plain white or slightly grayish, depending on how long it's been since laundry day. Oh, and laundry day. Your hands scrubbing your clothes in the Nile while hoping a hippo doesn't emerge mid-ar. Most people go barefoot. Sandals made from woven reeds or leather are reserved for special occasions or temple priests. So, unless you're royalty, expect to spend your days with hot sand between your toes and possibly a sharp rock in your heel. Accessories, absolutely, but mostly functional. Amulets for protection, necklaces to show status, and eye makeup made from powdered coal, which wasn't just for fashion. It helped reduce glare from the sun and supposedly warded off infections. Yes, even eyeliner had a job in ancient Egypt. But no matter how well you dress, the bugs don't care. Flies, gnats, mosquitoes. They treat your airy outfit as an invitation. You're walking through the day swatting constantly, rubbing on perfumed oils, and praying that your linen doesn't stick to you like a wet curtain the moment the sun reaches full strength. And of course, your outfit doesn't change with the seasons because Egypt doesn't really have seasons, just hot and slightly less hot. So, your linen ensemble is basically your year-round uniform, whether it's 110 degrees or a chilly 70 degrees evening. So, yes, Egyptian clothing was light, elegant, and far more comfortable than what Romans would wear later. But don't let the breezy outfits fool you. Because no matter how floaty your tunic feels, your life is still heavy with labor, heat, sand, and bugs that refuse to respect your personal space. You've survived another blistering Egyptian day, hauling bricks, dodging sandstorms, and praying your linen doesn't disintegrate mid-task. But in ancient Egypt, survival is always temporary. Because no matter how tough you are, you probably won't live past 35. Let's break it down. If you make it past childhood, which is already an achievement considering infant mortality rates were sky-high, you're thrust straight into adulthood by age 13. Marriage, work, and child-rearing all start early because honestly, you're running out of time. You might die from heat stroke or an infected cut or childbirth or crocodiles or scorpion stings or bad bread. And forget antibiotics. If you get a fever, the best treatment is honey, herbs, and hoping the gods don't have other plans for your soul. But here's the twist. Egyptians weren't scared of death. They planned for it. In fact, they planned for it better than most people plan for retirement today. If you're rich, you commission a tomb, the ancient version of a 5-star eternity suite. You start saving up grave goods, jewelry, food offerings, perfumes, statues, even tiny servant dolls called shabaptis to do your chores in the afterlife. Think of them as spiritual interns. Your body is embalmed, wrapped in linen, stuffed with matron, natural salt, and tucked neatly into a painted sarcophagus. You're buried with a copy of the Book of the Dead, which is less about doom and more like a mystical travel guide, complete with passwords for the afterlife, spells to confuse demons, and instructions for not getting eaten by soul-devouring monsters. If you're poor, well, your tomb is likely a shallow pit in the sand. Your body is wrapped in whatever fabric your family can spare. Maybe a pot or two placed nearby and then covered with earth. No murals, no golden mask, just you and the wind. But even the poorest Egyptians held on to the dream of the afterlife, a peaceful, fertile paradise called the Field of Reeds, where you farm without sweat, eat without hunger, and sail the Nile forever under gentle sunlight. So yes, you'll probably die young in ancient Egypt. But if you lived well, prayed right, and didn't insult too many jackal-headed gods, you just might spend eternity in style. You finally made it to the afterlife, or at least into the tomb. You've been embalmed, wrapped, blessed, and buried. Time to rest in peace, right? Well, not exactly. Because in ancient Egypt, even the dead get robbed. Let's start with a simple truth. Tombs are full of expensive stuff. Gold amulets, jewelry, perfumed oils, carved statues, chests full of linens, and for pharaohs, literal boatloads of treasure. All intended to be taken into the afterlife. But treasure in a tomb is basically an open invitation for someone with a chisel and bad intentions. Tomb robbery was so common that it became a full-time problem. Pharaohs tried to fight it. Things like, may a crocodile devour your soul, or may your limbs be twisted forever by a serpent made of fire. Spoiler, the curses didn't work. The grave robbers came anyway at night in secret with inside knowledge. Sometimes they were locals. Sometimes they were corrupt workers who helped build the tombs. In some cases, even priests and guards were in on it, and the punishment for getting caught severe. Think public beatings, mutilation, exile, or death. But considering how valuable tomb goods were, especially gold and rare incense, the risk often seemed worth it. After all, the dead don't fight back. But it's not just the wealthy who got robbed. Even commoners' graves were disturbed. Poor Egyptians might have been buried with a small pot of beer or a loaf of bread for the afterlife. That was still worth stealing. Food was scarce. Tools were valuable. And linen was currency. The irony. Tomb robbing wasn't just about greed. Sometimes it was about survival. Egypt went through famines, political collapse, and invasions. A hungry worker might break into a tomb not for treasure, but for food. And when your children are starving, a few funeral offerings look less like sacred objects and more like dinner. So in ancient Egypt, you're not safe just because you're dead. Your tomb can be looted, your name erased, and your mummy unwrapped by some desperate soul with a pickaxe and poor moral judgment. Rest in peace. Only if no one knows where you're buried. We've all seen them. Those majestic, mysterious carvings on the walls of temples and tombs. Birds' eyes, snakes, lotus flowers, men walking sideways like they're on a fashion runway. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Visually stunning and insanely difficult to learn. Sure, they look cool, but try reading them. The hieroglyphs weren't just decorative art. They were a full-blown writing system with over 700 characters and growing. Some symbols represent entire words. Others are sounds, and many are determinatives which clarify meaning because you know writing the word star with an actual star symbol might be too straightforward. And don't expect spaces or punctuation. Ancient Egyptian writing was basically one long, beautiful riddle with artistic flair, 0 vowels, and a deep need for context. Oh, and it can be written left to right to left, or top to bottom, depending on what the scribe felt like that day. The trick, look at which way the birds or people are facing. That's your reading direction. If they're facing right, read right. Facing left, read left. And if they're upside down, good luck. Learning to write hieroglyphs wasn't for commoners. Literacy was rare. Maybe 1% of the population could actually read and write. If you wanted in, you had to become a scribe, which meant years of intense education, starting as a child. You'd memorize hundreds of symbols, copy endless scrolls, and practice so much that your hand probably curled into a claw by age 15. But the payoff huge. Scribes were respected, well-fed, and never made to haul bricks under the sun. Instead, they wrote tax records, court documents, letters, and religious texts. They were essential to society and protected from most manual labor. In a world where writing was power, scribes ruled quietly from the shadows. For the rest of the population, though, writing was something magical. Literally, hieroglyphs were believed to have sacred power. Writing someone's name preserved their soul. Erasing it, total spiritual annihilation. So yeah, spelling really mattered. So while hieroglyphs may look like ancient emoji, they're more like a linguistic Rubik's Cube wrapped in myth, math, and mystery. Beautiful? Yes. Easy to learn? Absolutely not. After 14 chapters of heat, hunger, sand, superstition, and backbreaking labor, it's time to ask the big question. Would you survive a single day in ancient Egypt? Let's be honest. Probably not. Sure, it's easy to romanticize the ancient world. Golden tombs, lotus-scented air, graceful hieroglyphs, gods with animal heads, and a thing for order and beauty. But behind the iconic monuments and stunning art was a world of brutal realities that spared no one but the elite. Your average Egyptian day started with a dirt floor, a cloud of flies, and the knowledge that if you didn't work, you didn't eat. You walked barefoot on blazing sand, hauled water, cooked over open fires, lived shoulder to shoulder with bugs, smoke, and livestock. You worried about disease, divine punishment, and whether a snake might slither into your sleeping mat. You had no toothpaste, no medicine, no retirement plan. And if you were lucky, maybe 2 changes of linen. You served a god-king who could take your land with a decree, a climate that cooked your skin by noon, and a religion that required you to pass a literal divine test after death just to get into the good version of the afterlife. Let's also not forget the things you didn't have. No antibiotics, no sunscreen, no privacy, no plumbing, no painkillers, and no easy escape. Once you were born into your class, that was it. No promotions, no career changes, no finding yourself. You were either a scribe, a farmer, a laborer, a mother, a servant, or dead. And yet, for all this, the ancient Egyptians weren't miserable. They believed deeply in their gods, their purpose, and the beauty of life. They loved music, dance, food, family, and festivals. They joked, they painted. They imagined eternity with enough clarity to build stone monuments that still stand today. But for a modern person, without your air conditioning, your filtered water, your Advil, your sneakers, and your smartphone, you'd fold before the second sandstorm hit. So, no, you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt. But that's okay because they lasted thousands of years. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we still talk about them. In the heart of ancient Teotihuacan, one pyramid refuses to be forgotten. Its surface is adorned not with peaceful symbols of faith or gentle gods, but with snarling open-mouthed stone serpents, dozens of them. They jut out from the temple's facade as if frozen in mid-strike, fangs bared, eyes wide. This is the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, known to many as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. But unlike most temples that reach for the sky with reverence, this one feels different. It feels predatory. From the moment you approach it, there's an eerie sense that you're being watched. The stone serpent heads aren't mere decoration. They were warnings, symbols of divine wrath. And beneath their gaze, something horrific once unfolded. Excavations over the past few decades have revealed something that archaeologists didn't expect. Hidden beneath the temple's base were not just ceremonial offerings, but something far more disturbing. Human remains. And not a handful. Over 200 bodies, many of them decapitated, hands bound behind their backs. Young men, warriors perhaps buried in groups, ritual sacrifices arranged with mathematical precision. Some were buried with obsidian knives at their sides, others with necklaces made of human teeth or jewelry crafted from jawbones. They weren't simply thrown into the ground. They were deliberately placed in positions of symbolic significance. It's clear this was no mass grave. It was a message, a divine transaction carved into stone and sealed with blood. But what kind of belief system justifies such horror? Who demanded so many lives be taken at once? The Temple of the Fathered Serpent wasn't just a religious building. It was a theater of power, a place where rulers fused cosmology, warfare, and fear to maintain control over a city of more than 100,000 souls. And this ritual bloodletting may have been the cost of keeping the cosmos in balance. As you stand before this temple today, gazing at those stone serpents, you're not just looking at art or architecture. You're looking into the eyes of a civilization that believed the gods needed blood and that they had every right to deliver it. But who were these people? Who commanded such violence and vanished without a trace? The answer lies in the shadows of Teotihuacan. Before the mighty Aztec Empire, before the Maya carved their cosmic calendar into stone, there stood a city unlike any other in the ancient Americas, Teotihuacan. Its name, given by the later Aztecs, means the place where gods were born. And when you walk its immense avenue of the dead, flanked by pyramids that scrape the heavens, you start to understand why. At its height around 100 to 250 CE, Teotihuacan was a sprawling metropolis of over 100,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in the world at the time, rivaling ancient Rome, Alexandria, and Chang'an in size and influence.